Chris, thanks for taking the time. We want to look at some of the burning questions that a lot of our clients have been asking.
I always have time for you, Bradford.
Oh, thank you.
You got it.
Yeah. And we want to look at specifically the area of employee growth planning and individual skill enhancement. So adjust your algorithm. Perfect. Ready. So why might a manager want to invest in their employee skill development?
I mean, it's the kind of silly question of, why, what is the saying? Like, if you train them, then they'll leave, and if they don't, then they'll stay. Isn't there, what's that saying?
Oh, I don't know it, but that makes sense.
That's not at all.
That's like the negative version of
yes.
that.
Like, they're like, well, what if we train them?
And then they leave.
And
Okay.
the other response is, well, like, what if we don't and they stay?
Right.
Right? And so managers constantly should want to grow their people. It usually will help them, right? They're able to take more off their plate. They can focus on bigger things. They can take on another project. There's so many different pieces. They feel less stressed. But it's also giving, that's what this work is supposed to be about. It's, the construction industry is a team industry, and you want to see folks grow around you. Yeah. And so there is this want to see people grow. I think the struggle is like how do we do it? And most people in the construction industry are like, you do it by working 80 hours a week, by just being on site and staying on site and asking a bunch of questions. I think there's some value to that. I think you can also be really intentional as an organization into what that value is. Like, what are they doing for 80 hours? What are they spending those 80 hours on? Are they just like doing the same repetitive task over and over and over again? Great. Want them to become an expert, want them to fully be able to own it. But if they're not continuing to learn new things, then they're going to be really good at RFIs, and that's it. And so it's like, how can we give them the magnitude of work that they need to be successful, to grow their career, while also kind of acknowledging that it's going to take some time and that you're not going to be able to get promoted right away.
So there's a theory of deliberate practice, or I think it's a little bit, you've heard 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
So Malcolm Gladwell, I think, based that on some research by some other folks that were looking at how you can learn more intentionally. And so with 10,000 hours of deliberate practice, right, being intentional about how you learn, you're able to absorb so much more and then grow, as opposed to just passively learning. Right.
And I've had that conversation with some clients of like, should we just have them like hyper focus on a certain area for 2 to 3 years? Like, if you have the opportunity, which almost no one does, right, to have 3 project engineers on your project, like, should they, one, just be doing RFIs, one, just be doing submittals, and like one just doing meeting minutes? And it's like, well, they're going to be awesome at that, but are they going to be like, they won't be able to be promoted until they learn those other pieces.
And then on the next project, what about when needs shift? And then they don't...
Or when you don't actually have 3 PEs, and like, which is, and probably for most of the people listening, like a dream world that is completely impossible for any of them to think about.
So what would you say is a well-rounded approach to employee growth then?
Ooh, I like that question. And I have an answer.
Okay.
Shocker. So I tend to think about learning and development in kind of 5 or 6 different buckets. Okay. There's the soft skills, management, leadership skills, technical skills, kind of their day-to-day job responsibilities, technology, which is constantly changing, in-house processes, and then certifications, especially in this industry. There's so many. Yeah. So if I like to bucket them that way, it creates a more of a well-balanced approach. I can see the value of at times like hyper focusing on one, especially when they're just starting out. In-house processes might be the area of like, I just need you to understand the in-house processes. You need to know how we do things here. Like, kind of side note or future video tip, like you actually have to have the in-house processes written down or videotaped or some way for people to actually be able to learn them. Yeah, okay. Or maybe they're the folks that like, okay, we need this person to like learn how to do it, and we want them to write it because they don't know anything, and if they can write it, then anyone can do it. So there's always that opportunity to look at it in that way. But that was a little spoiler alert there.
It sounds like a nice opportunity to develop not just those folks that are learning these standard operating procedures for the first time, or processes for the first time, but also to develop those folks who maybe not develop them, but harvest some of their knowledge. So get them to design some of these operating procedures so that they can share their knowledge with this next generation of employees.
We're getting ahead. That we can't talk about that. That's for another video.
Oh, okay.
But 100%, the processes are important.
Okay.
And like if I were thinking about a person's career growth, tending to start there, or even like a lot of the certifications, OSHA 30, CPR, those are great. NFPA. Great ones to have right from the beginning, and then you can focus on the technology and you can focus on the more technical skills, soft skills, leadership skills.
And how do you engage in a conversation about career growth with an employee? If I'm a manager managing a team of folks, is it my responsibility to broach this subject? Should I have a career plan for them kind of ready to go? Should they be coming to me? Is it a blend? What does that look like?
I definitely would recommend it being a blend. Okay. I think the employee has to want it, but they're maybe a little nervous to say that they want it, right? Okay. They don't want to admit, or maybe they feel like that would be selfish of them, depending on what your company's culture is, right? Like people don't necessarily, a lot of junior folks don't know how it might come off. But yes, to answer your question, definitely want it to be a two-way approach. And so for employees to ask for feedback, what can I do better? What can I continue to work on? This is my kind of like ultimate goal, or this is the next step I want to take in my career. What feedback do you have for me to help me get there? But also on the manager to constantly be kind of thinking about it. There are so many great folks out here, and in Massachusetts, from a construction perspective, there are so many great construction companies out here that if you're not giving people that attention and that guidance, they're going to leave and go somewhere else at will.
And I've heard you use this fact before, but is there a certain what is it cost what is the cost of retaining an employee and growing them versus hiring and rehiring new folks year after year?
It is 21% more expensive to hire a new. It was like something like 18 to 21% more expensive to hire a new employee, and they have a much higher likelihood of leaving in that first year than growing the folks. Now, that could be seen also in like a negative way of like, oh, you weren't willing to pay that person, and now all of a sudden you're having to pay them. I think a lot of those stats maybe come from the recruiter fee too, because there's a lot of folks that are using staffing agencies, and that's a pretty penny. People are regularly spending 20 to 25% on staffing fees alone to hire new people.
Wow. Okay. And that'll be a topic I think for a different day as well. How we engage our future hires.
Another spoiler.
I know, too many spoilers. It's coming. I like it. Well, there's a lot to cover. We have a lot of people to grow, and there are a lot of things to enhance. I want to focus again on employee growth planning and individual skill enhancement. So, do you have an example of where you've seen employee growth development go really well? An experience that you've had with one of our clients, either recently or in the past, that you've seen like it really work?
Yeah. Like when organizations have the opportunity to think about learning and development and how it can function organizationally, that's really cool. A lot of folks are like, I just want to dip my toe in, right? And so we're kind of starting from the bottom, kind of ad hocing it. But we had one organization that we kind of like got to think about it right from the top. And so we're able to build out like career paths by role for every single position. And then from there, you're able to look at like, okay, how can we focus specifically on this role, or potentially based on the size, like how can we focus on these few specific individuals? Usually it would be bucketed in those 5 or 6 different categories that we talked about before. But then we're also acknowledging kind of bringing in that 70-20-10 approach, right? The 70% experiential, 20% kind of mentoring, social learning, and 10% is the formal learning. That concept into, okay, if those are the different areas, if those 5 or 6 categories are the areas that people need to learn, do they need to learn it in a formal setting? Does there need to be an actual workshop? And if so, do we need to send them somewhere, or can it be taught in-house? Or can it be taught on the job site? But being really intentional about making sure that they're seeing it on the job site, because most people, I bet, they're listening to this, they're like, oh, that could be taught on site. Great. Are you giving them that opportunity? Are you making sure that opportunity is becoming available for them?
Naming it and giving them the time to do it.
Right.
So I've heard you speak before about the different types of learning. I was wondering if you could maybe speak to that a little bit. I know there's a 70%, 70-20-10 rule.
Yeah.
Do you mind speaking to that a little bit?
Yeah. So 70% is that experiential. It's kind of the on-the-job, learn as you go, kind of like get thrown into it. Again, I'm big on like, how can we make that really, really intentional? Onboarding is a great way of like, how can you make the intentional onboarding? We're not necessarily having a bunch of trainings, but you're meeting with different people, understanding what they do and how your role intertwines with theirs, understanding their culture, that kind of thing. Maybe shadowing folks on your sites for a few days. That would be considered experiential learning. The 20% is, again, that social learning or mentoring. Could have a formal mentor program. I don't necessarily think it's needed. I am a big believer on like not needing a formal mentoring program, and it just can be informal, utilizing the team that you have, but like having and learning and asking questions with your peers, your colleagues on your site, or if you find that you've got folks that you've interacted with or want to interact with that are on different projects, even better. And then the 10% is really just the formal, like those more formal workshops. It could be an e-learning, it could be a video, or it could be an in-house workshop. It could be a workshop that you send folks to. So that makes up 70-20-10 altogether equals 100%, which is the concept of like everything you've ever learned in your life could be put into one of those buckets. And you'll find that if you like think about the longevity of someone's career, they don't go to as many formal workshops, and that doesn't mean that they haven't learned anything.
Right.
It means that they've learned so much through that experiential and social learning.
Got it. So for folks who don't have a formal plan, what is one thing leaders can start to do right away?
My recommendation would be finding someone who maybe is, if we're like thinking about like a scale of 0 to 10, finding someone who's maybe at that like if you were to, I'm not asking people to just like rate people on a scale of 1 to 10, but I am asking people to rate people on a scale of 1 to 10,
right.
Just for this example.
Just this once?
Just one time.
Okay.
Like find someone who is what you would be kind of consider like a 7. That like that's like the NPS score, right? That someone who's a 7, you can kind of, it's not going to take a bunch of effort to get them to an 8, 9, or 10. You don't need them to be a 10. How can you get them like sharpen them just a little bit to be absolutely excellent? The main reason has nothing to do with them and more to do with you and the feeling of accomplishment and the value that giving someone some extra time. Usually that means if they are that you find that person, they're what you've rated them as a 7, you're going to give them some one-on-one attention. You're going to give them some one-on-one time. They're going to grow, and then ideally you now don't have to give them as much attention, and you can maybe now focus on 2 people because some more of your time has been gifted back to you through giving them some of your time.
That's great. Well, thanks for taking the time to meet with us. I'm sure more questions will arise, and we will corner you again and
Amazing.
pick your brain a little bit.
I can't wait.
All right. Thanks so much.